This is Deborah Johnson for Women at Halftime, and I'm passionate about helping women use their untapped skills, resources, and talents to create their ideal work and lifestyle, making a difference in their second half. Well, hello, everyone. I am so excited about presenting today's message, which is actually a really thought-provoking and somber message in many ways, but it's very impactful and a message I feel needs to be out there as much as possible, especially from the audience to the Women at Halftime podcast. And before I get to that, that as this airs, I have a new book coming out, so very exciting about that. And to make sure you sign up, you can get to my website anywhere, womenathalftime.com, get on my newsletter so you can get all the latest news. And I'm always putting out something new. And if you get my weekly e-articles, you will get all of that information. So I'm going to get right to this. The subject today, I have Laura Stack with me. Hello, Laura. Thank you for being here. You are a busy, busy lady.
Thank you for having me, Deborah. I appreciate it.
It is just wonderful. So she has, our subject today, the story of Johnny and impact of marijuana. This is a hot topic. And Laura, I mean, you are a Speaker Hall of Fame. You've got so many credits. I am not going to list them all. You can look her up on her website. She's written 8 books and running the company, The Productivity Pro. But the last book you have written, Laura, was one you were not planning on writing. And it's the one I just read of yours, The Dangerous Truth About Today's Marijuana. And Johnny Stack's life and death story. That gives you a little clue of what we're going to talk about today. So briefly, I know you can expound on this for a very long time, Laura, but I want you to tell us who Johnny was before and after marijuana use.
Well, thank you for having me. And yes, the book kind of gives you an idea that my son did die by suicide in November 20th of 2019. So it's been almost a year and a half now. And he became psychotic from dabbing. A lot of people don't know that term. Marijuana concentrates. We live in Colorado. And Johnny was able to get access to marijuana when it was made legal in 2012 recreationally. And in 2014, it came out commercially, and he was a freshman in high school. In Colorado, when you're 18, you can go to what we refer to as pot shop docs and get a medical marijuana card by making up some mysterious ailment like a migraine. And the 5 years before when he first used until he died, he was able to access in Colorado what are very, very potent concentrated products. They aren't grass or flower or what most people think of. And before, this happened, we have a very happy family life. We have 3 children. We went to church, went on vacation, did, normal kind of family things. He ran cross country. He played the piano, the guitar. He was a brown belt in karate. He was a genius in math. He scored a perfect 800 out of 800 on the SAT portion of math and had a 4.0. And, everyone would just think he was the perfect kid and we were the perfect little family. And his marijuana use changed all that. He threatened to kill our family dog if we did not give him money to buy his marijuana. He became very abusive, verbally, grades plummeted, didn't go to school. He was defiant. He just became a completely different person. And we tried for many, many years to help him. And sadly, he did die.
And the book really documents that journey. I want to make sure everyone is not afraid to read the book because it starts out, it's a sobering journey, especially for a mom. I'm a mom of 3, and it's a sobering, and of sons. It's a sobering book about this, but it's one I feel that every parent and grandparent needs to read.
And anyone
Yes.
involved with youth at any level,
Yes.
therapists,
Yes.
doctors, drug prevention specialists, so many people don't understand. And today's marijuana, they think about Woodstock or when they were a kid and, rolled a joint and smoked marijuana and have no concept of the chemicals that are used today.
Right, right. And I know we'll get into this a little bit more, but your book is also really well sourced. You have the sources with the white papers, with the actual research. That's one of my pet peeves is that, throwing out all of these numbers or whatever, it is very, very well researched and gives you all the sources to go to.
Yes, I have 176 endnotes. We have a scientific advisory board at our nonprofit. Everything is documented and based on peer-to-peer reviews in scientific journals. I don't simply make a claim. I weave Johnny's story. When I explain something that happened to him, then I will give a link so that people can read further about whatever the particular issue is that we're talking about and its impacts on adolescents. And I think too, I want to make clear that we are concerned with youth marijuana prevention. I am not a prohibitionist. I don't think in Colorado, at least, we are not going to be able to roll back our laws that made it legal. I don't think you should go to jail for having a little weed in your pocket. A lot of people think I want to, take away their medicine. And there are some children here in Colorado, for example, with severe seizure disorders, with extreme autism, for whom the marijuana has proven to be medically beneficial. What we're talking about are children, often, sadly, here in Colorado, 1 out of every 10 middle schoolers, 12 years old, are using marijuana and their brains are impacted. The continuing brain development until mid-20s is the age range that we are really looking at and how it impacts the normal formation of the brain and leads to mental illness and sadly often to suicide in Colorado. In Colorado, suicide in young adults is the number one cause of death. And 36% of all completed suicides in 2018, that's the last year we have data, ages 15 through 19, had THC in their toxicology. It's a big, big problem here. And it's coming to a state near you. And if we federalize legalization, our message will be even more critical about youth and the problems with their use.
Yes, and I mean, what a message here. Your business has been totally different, and it was completely turned upside down now. But starting the nonprofit, it is no easy task to.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I am very thankful in a way. I thank God for COVID because I still run our 2 for-profit companies. Our charity doesn't pay the bills. We still are keeping those running, but this is my passion. I'm very resolved to keep this from happening to other youth like Johnny and following his path. But I wouldn't have been able to do this had it not been for COVID. The time was he died in November, and then we scattered his ashes in February, and then March was COVID, and so I started the nonprofit. In May of 2020. So it's been a little over a year. So we have made a lot of progress, educating, no profits. Profits. We are private donation funded only. We don't have, grants or government help. We have 3,000 ambassadors now. I'm very proud to say in a year around the world, who are aware of this problem and helping us work to get the word out.
How exciting. And I'll have all those links in the article that goes with this, of course, and you can get a hold of Laura anytime.
Yes.
I want to talk about what a gateway drug is and how marijuana fits into this category of what this gateway, where it leads. That's like,
Sure.
Going through opening a gate.
Well, I mean, so first people need to understand that the marijuana here, there's a solvent that's run through the plant, and it breaks off the trichomes of the plant, which contain the THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, delta 9, which is the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis that makes you high. So that solvent and THC liquid is then filtered and dried. The plant is discarded. So there's nothing natural about what's being created here. In the old days, when I was in the 80s, I'm not a prude. We smoked weed when we could find it. We rolled a joint. It was 2 to 4% THC in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And then when it became commercialized and it's completely unregulated here in Colorado, they can make it as potent as they want. Now up to 99% pure THC, because they just take out the psychoactive component and they don't use the plant. You can still buy flower and smoke it, but smoking is going way down here in Colorado and statistically significant in children, in youth and teens. Dabbing's way up. Vaping, very high potency. Oils is way up. The use of edibles. So everything here at a minimum is 60% in a concentrate, 80 for wax, shatters, dabs, and crystalline is nearly pure. It's like the equivalent of creating crack out of cocaine, THC products, dabs, concentrates out of marijuana. So that's why people don't understand. Many have never heard the term dabbing or shatter or wax. They don't even know what that is. So that's the first point when you talk about a gateway drug. The next point to understand is that because the potency is very high, it releases just extreme amounts of dopamine in a user's brain that is never intended to be that high, incredibly high, like higher. We're talking higher than sex, higher than other narcotic drugs. And pretty soon a teen has to start using dabbing just to feel normal, right? They're no longer dabbing to get high as it becomes more and more difficult to attain that same level of high. They use in more frequency, in higher concentration, more often. And so it now becomes a dependence. It is an addiction. Some people believe you cannot be addicted to marijuana. You can. Only high potency products do cause addiction. It's in the DSM-5. There are cannabis use disorders. There are cannabis withdrawal symptoms. All of these things are documented medically. And with a gateway, what happens is because they're always chasing that first high they got from using these products, which was so extreme. And it's very difficult for, more than 15 minutes to a half hour. I understand from talking with teens to really achieve that. So they're using higher and higher amounts and just not feeling the same high. So they then start to use other things. That's what a gateway is. You start with one thing and it leads to other things. So for example, the Centers for Disease Control, their youth behavioral research study, risk study, in 2019 showed that the number one predictor now, this is brand new, of a high school teen having abused opioids in the past 30 days is lifetime marijuana use, not alcohol. So we talk about, and there's a lot of, pro marijuana people who are very threatened by this conversation, even though we're talking about youth.
Right.
They say, oh yeah, children shouldn't use this, but the marijuana industry really does need to addict youth because that's the majority of their users between 18 and 24 years old, right? A very small percentage of people buy a large percentage of this product. So addiction is an adolescent onset disease. So when you see that lifetime marijuana use is the number one predictor of whether a high school senior will abuse opioids, you go, oh, this is actually a gateway drug. And research bears it out. And there are studies and links in the book to prove that.
Yeah, there definitely are. I have gone through pretty much your whole book now. I think I'm at the very end. I tried to read it right before. I tried to do that.
309 pages.
Yeah, it was a little hefty, but it was so informative. I like to come prepared on some of these interviews because this is a very important subject and topic.
Yes.
When we talk about, you really covered that well with that gateway, because it really does lead to other things. It's actually astonishing that this is number one, that marijuana is, because it did used to be alcohol, and things are so different today. I think that's one of the main points.
And it's not that alcohol is not bad for you. It is.
Right.
It's not that, heroin is not bad for you. It is. Right?
Yes.
But when we look at in youth, what leads to other use, then we have to address the marijuana use. It is almost always co-occurring. A teen never goes, oh, I think I'll shoot up with heroin, right? You just don't do that. They've always started with the marijuana use in almost all instances.
Yeah. And your point too, you made this, and raising sons, I knew this really well. We were kind of massaging our sons, the front of their brain. They're just a little, especially with boys, but it takes a little while for all of that development. Yeah. And what happens with this drug use is it definitely affects the brain, and it with their growth, with their emotional, with their everything, a part about them. And it goes directly to that, to those thoughts, those psychotic, with the drug, the psychotic element there.
No, so. You're right. I mean, they're not just, psychosis and those effects or outcomes that come out of it, but just chemically, physiologically, structurally. There's links to research to MRIs. Youth who used, and then later on an MRI of the, compared to the ones who don't, there is a thinning in the prefrontal cortices, where there is executive function, judgment. You see a lot more risk-taking, poor decision-making. It's the normal brain process, which is pruning and myelination, right? Which is getting rid of synapses that are not efficient for the brain, which is a good thing. And then insulating those connections that lead to hard-term memories, such as if you're going to be a basketball player, right? You want to myelinate the circuit for throwing a free throw. But when marijuana is used, the brain is pruning things in an excited fashion. That's why there's not as much gray matter in the frontal cortex, and it accidentally cuts off things that you need. It creates all sorts of bad outcomes in adolescence as a result. And inside our brain, there are places called the CB1, cannabinoid 1, in our endocannabinoid system that the THC latches onto. So normally, when you run a race, right, and you get the runner's high, there's a natural neurotransmitter called anandamide, and that is what clicks into your CB1 and makes you feel good. Well, the molecule of THC looks very suspiciously like the molecule of anandamide, and it tricks the brain and locks in and binds that receptor, and THC stays in your system for 3 weeks, and it prevents your normal chemical signals from getting into your brain and handling your normal body processes. And so there are 8 different places, primarily in the brain, where THC binds and affects reward systems, memory, balance. There's all sorts of problems. And you mentioned psychosis. It can be an outcome of that as well. Actually triggering psychotic episodes in young people, not that they would have had them in the first place. So the brain impact is huge. And that's been a big part of our mission here at Johnny's Ambassadors. If you go to johnnysambassadors.org and go to our education, there's probably 50 different 1-hour webinars on there now with doctors and brain neurologists and drug chemists and psychiatrists, just to educate people on the problems that we're talking about here. I'm not a clinician, so I bring in a lot of outside doctors to help people understand this brain science.
I think it's fascinating. And I talk about, even in music, learning music and all of that, how the myelin sheath is so important and how it works. And all of this just disrupts that, or it creates all of those new patterns, and they can't help, they keep going back and back and back.
Yes.
So when we talked about dabs, I was really unfamiliar with that term. And anyone watching the video, they will see your T-shirt. Stop dabbing.
Yes, stop dabbing. Yes, that's our term we use. Hashtag stop dabbing. Dab is a verb for using a concentrate. Basically, it's called a dab because you only need a little dab. It's literally, what you can get on the pinhead of a needle or a nail, and it's you use a butane torch and you heat up, a rig or a pen or a very hot surface, and then you just touch that the dab of concentrate to that hot surface, which vaporizes the chemicals, and you inhale the vapors of that particular chemical. Hopefully they've gotten most of the butane or ethanol or propane out of there, but it doesn't always. So it can be poisonous in addition to being toxic, intoxicating. So a dab, when you tell people, there were dabs at the party, or my son was dabbing, they think of these bad dance moves, dabbing. But I mean, I did a Facebook post about this, 6 months after Johnny died, maybe 4 months. And I just said, if you ever heard of dabbing, Johnny was dabbing, and I got 20,000 shares. It was the most incredible thing. I mean, I couldn't even do that in the 30 years I'd been trying. And there were like 3,000 comments, and to a T, they all said, I have no idea what you're talking about. Wow. I don't know what is a dab. So, part of what I think our responsibility is as parents, as grandparents, uncles, aunts, anybody working with youth, go to a dispensary, walk in there, look at what the products are. What is this stuff? Ask for a tutorial. If you're more than 25 years old, it is very likely you have not seen these things.
Yes.
Girls here in our local high school, they have tampons that they put in that are infused with THC. The men use suppositories that have THC. They're sitting in class getting high. It's very discreet. These products have no smell. They are very transportable. The vapes you can use in any e-cigarette cartridge and refill it, and you tell your parents you're just using a Juul, and they're completely clueless that you're actually using marijuana, not nicotine. So it's really incumbent on every adult to understand, so that when things like legislation comes your way, you're actually educated and can vote intelligently. I know our voters in 2012 had no idea they were voting in these concentrates. We had to actually put a bill in place that was just passed a few months ago to push back and now regulate marijuana concentrates.
Wow.
Because we didn't even know these things back then existed. And I have a feeling that many voters, had they understood what these products are and how potent they are, would be a little more concerned about regulating them and keeping them out of the hands of children.
Right. And it's so available. That was
every
shocking.
party.
Yeah,
every party.
That was shocking, because I knew, that even our kids, if there's alcohol and all this, really no clue about all of this. And
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I feel fortunate our kids are launched and all that, but this is
It's
very,
easy
very
to get.
serious.
It's just like alcohol. It's an 18-year-old, it's like a rite of passage, sadly, in our high schools. You're a senior, you're 18, woo, you go get your med card. You can go from dispensary to dispensary and buy your limit there. It's not tracked. It will be. That's part of our bill. And then they go back and sell it to all the younger kids. I mean, any high school party, college party, and our surviving son, we have 2 other children, is a senior in college, and it is everywhere. And he's on our board of directors. And, he just talks to me all the time about how much of a thing it is, and how the industry really works to convince these young adults that it's harmless, and that it must be medicinal. It's legal, right? It can't hurt you. So there's this built-in peer pressure. If you don't use, like, everybody does it, what's wrong with you? So it's definitely a cultural thing that you have to, they have to push back on and just say, no, you go ahead. It's not for me. He had a friend he recently helped get off. He was sweating profusely and vomiting and couldn't figure out what it is. And my son's like, dude, it's the weed, lay off the weed. And sure enough, magically 2 weeks later, he's cured. So, it's just going to take a lot of time and effort, I think, for us to get the word out, and for parents, especially, not to be tolerant, right? No, it's not allowed. That is, it's not just weed, right? And it's a hard drug. It is a narcotic, and it is not allowed in our home, and you will not do it. Right. And having a parent who disagrees with it, the research shows, actually is a good way to keep children from using. If a parent has a very lax attitude, like, I don't really care, kids will be kids, I did it too, right? Then the child is much more likely to use if the parent doesn't firmly say not acceptable.
Yes. I think I'm such a believer in the family and how important that is, parents and grandparents. Many are working a lot, single parent families, and they're not able to deal with all this. That's why your teachers and anyone supporting an aunt, an uncle, anyone, extended family. So important to get that message out.
Absolutely.
And, definitely.
And when you use it yourself, right? Then that is modeling. Studies show if a mom uses, a child is 80% more likely to use, and a dad 90%. So you have to look at your own behavior and ask yourself if how you want that reflected. You would feel pretty bad if your child developed a psychotic disorder from using. And sadly, some parents are even supplying it, thinking that it is somehow helping a child because of false narrative and misinformation with their stress, when in reality, it actually causes anxiety, causes depression, causes a slew of mental illnesses such as schizophrenia and bipolar and many other disorders. And so just really ask parents to take a look at the research, not just take my word for it, but get educated.
Yes, the education, look at the articles, look at the summation of all of that. And the articles I put out are a summation, so they'll be a little easier to get through, but there's
we have a summation too on our website.
Good.
If you go to johnny'sambassadors.org/research, every single study, there is a link, a date, the authors, and a link to the original research and my written synopsis.
Good.
So there's a 1-paragraph summary so that they can scan through and really find the studies that they're looking for in particular.
That will be extremely valuable. I will put that in.
It was a lot of work, but it's...
I tell you, writing these books, I did finish my 5th. It'll be coming out this fall. And it's a lot of work.
Yes.
And that's, that's another podcast will be coming up.
This is number 9. Yeah. It's,
oh my gosh.
6 months with your bottom in a chair, writing.
It is.
And it's hard. There's no other way around it. It's a very difficult process, but, a lot of headaches and tears later, it's done, and that's the important thing. I'm really hoping that I am given a path to speak about what happened to Johnny, and actually share his warning. 3 days before he died, he told me that I was right. He said, "You told me marijuana would hurt my brain, and it has ruined my mind and my life, and I'm sorry, and I love you." And 3 days later, he was dead.
Yeah.
So we have to tell people what he said, and encourage them, because they're going to follow his path, and we just can't lose any more young people. It's so toxic for them.
Yeah, and with all of the shutdowns and with all the depression anyway and all of that, it's magnified. So
the health of our young people's brains is at stake.
It really is. So you do mention, I'm going to go off on a couple other things, because I think it's important for anyone who is a parent and you've raised a child and you think, I wish I had have done this, or I wish. And you talk about that you have regrets. But most of those were based on a lack of information and support. You just, when we start raising kids, like, is there a guidebook for this? I mean, there's just,
I appreciate that. I just, I think we all have regrets. I mean, even in my alive children, I have, regrets where none of us are perfect parents. And, looking back, I think, I can see now, hindsight's always 2020. Of course, I didn't know he was going to die. I made the best decisions I think I could at the time with the limited information I have. I had no idea about concentrates. I mean, I didn't even know what a dab was until he was suicidal in his first hospital stay. And we found, cleaning out his dorm room, a nectar kit in his drawer. And we were like, what is this stuff? So you just feel bad that you didn't know what you didn't know, but that's not my fault. I didn't know that. My insurance was a disaster. In Colorado, they don't want to pay for, it's just marijuana. I didn't know what to do, where to send him. I had really important junctions at some points that I didn't know at the time was an important decision point. Before he turned 18, when he was 17, I had an opportunity and didn't know it, that I needed to send him to a long-term residential center to get help, because as soon as he turned 18, he withdrew all of the consents that, for his doctor and his psychiatrist and the mental hospitals and the university. And I couldn't get any help and any information. And it was just an incredibly helpless feeling, and we try to kind of walk people through that. I have regrets, but I think that I use that now to say, look, I didn't cause his death. I didn't force the drugs down his throat. In fact, quite the opposite. It was just, not allowed. I'm from a military family. That's not allowed. We thought he was following the rules. He wasn't. But you can't control another human being at some point. And I've had to really kind of come to grips with that he was a victim. He should never have had access to these incredibly potent drugs. And I do blame, the lawyers who passed legislation, the people who fund it, the pot lobby, the manufacturers of these poisons. I do believe there are a lot of things that contributed to his demise, and firmly believe and know in all my heart, if he hadn't used marijuana, he'd still be here today. So I do have a lot of, I guess, bitterness over that. You get a mama angry.
Oh, of course. I'm feeling it with you.
It makes me, it makes me spend a lot of time going after as much as I can to prevent that from happening.
But you've used that as your mission. But another thing I want to highlight here is that you also forgave. And I think that's a big part of your journey, because it'll just totally eat you up. And you went through this, and you document this in your book, which I thought was very special. Oh my gosh, she forgave this, and she gave that, forgave that, but that sort of process is for that forgiveness. It gives you the freedom, not only them, but it gives you the freedom to move on. And
thank you for that. Yeah. It was hard because, there were a lot of people involved in his life who took him down bad paths, bad, groups of friends, people who got him involved, a girlfriend he dated who brought him back into dabbing after he'd already given it up and had 2 rounds of psychosis and recovery when he didn't use, and, took him back. And, I just had to let go of that bitterness. These are just kids in many cases. And in the case of who I call BNG, the bad news girlfriend, she was mentally ill. And so you can't blame these people. And you have to, at some point let it go, because it was blocking me from, being able to get out of bed in the morning and move on with my life, and robbing me of joy. And I was angry all the time. And so, I did finally get to a place where I was able to forgive them, and it has let me realize, I can find joy and still hope that those people get help. They still, many of them do still need help.
Yes. I just thought that was a really beautiful, the way that you are telling, because you really told your journey all the way, and
every detail,
the emotion that you went through. Oh my gosh. It was, I'm feeling it with you.
So much crying, and it was awful.
So much of that. And
I get to the point today where, there are days that I don't cry, and that's finally like, okay, that's a relief. And then I have really bad days too. I don't think, it's never something you get over.
No.
Of course, but I'm working to move through it and to try to turn it into good.
Yes. That's the best. And that's become now your mission, and with all of this information, curriculum, and
stop dabbing. Yes. Online marijuana curriculum for youth. So that took a lot of private funding. Thank you to our donors, but we now want to get it into schools and youth groups and, boys and girls clubs, and, any teen on their phone can take our curriculum. And so, that's the next step, is to try to bring it to them direct to teen, and raise awareness, so that the next time they're at a party and someone says, here, hit this, they can make an intelligent decision if that's something that they want to do. They just don't think it's harmful.
Right.
So that's our goal, is to increase the perception of harm and decrease the use. And if we can do that, our mission has been a success.
And Laura, it's giving them the words, the language, and how to respond to some of this. It's a big deal, because it's like, okay, what do I say now? And I remember with alcohol and all of that, I would just, and I thought, I'm not really, I didn't like the taste pretty much. But I just kind of go around and with my glass of milk, or, whatever, just to kind of be a rebel. But, and a lot of times I'll just have, just a sparkly drink or something if I don't want to, wine affects me.
Well, I think it is a lot in your messaging. You're right.
Yes, it is.
And you speak to your child, and when they, that's different when they're 8, and how you're going to address this versus 10 versus 12 versus 14. Right. And there's a journey in there, it just doesn't resonate with a kid, because I said so, they need to actually be spoken to respectfully and to be understood. Right. And it didn't have enough knowledge, I think, about emotional intelligence, and could not very well meet Johnny where he was at. I was so desperate at the time that you don't really try to explain, like, the neuroscience, for example, because I didn't know it. I just knew that I was losing my child before my eyes, and was desperate for help. So there are many things we can do as our children are growing, to respect them and to talk with them intellectually about why, and which means you need to have the knowledge yourself that lets them understand why you're setting these boundaries, why you're going to drug test them each week. And it gives them an out, when they go to a party, nah, not for me. My mom drug tests me. They're just some very easy things that I wish I known, that we hope will be helpful in the book for parents trying to handle this very tricky age, as you mentioned, they're already moody, already defiant and irritable. So trying to get through to them is really critical.
We always called that time that they went through the pit. They kind of, they just, okay, where, but they're finding themselves too. So of course they're experimenting, they're trying to be popular, they're doing all of these things. That's why that language and that those solid verbal skills, confidence, anything that you can give your child with this is so very, very important. And reading through this as a parent and now grandparent, I just, my heart just goes out through, all of this. So, and that's kind of what I wanted to kind of end on today. And then any last things that you wanted to say was, I kind of wanted to look ahead, like with hope and what's for the future. And what's new at this point in Laura Stack's life? Well, you are now pursuing the youth education, especially to put that curriculum in, but you're also running your other businesses. And this has become, as I call your second half of your life, really you're at a little more than that second, you're at that, definitely in that stage of your life.
52, I'm definitely there.
Yeah, so am I. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But the impact that you can still have, I mean, I'd like to work clear it through my 80s. I mean, I just don't see stopping. I love what I do. But this has given you such a renewed mission. And but it's brought about by circumstance, and I kind of wanted to bring that point out that sometimes we don't even know what that is going to. We kind of have to look around you and see. Yours was just definitely dropped on you with this amazing.
No, I firmly believe that it was given to me. I'm a religious person. I believe the Lord has given me this path, and it's my job to follow it. And things have been very, very simple. It happens all very easily now. Opportunities just appear, and I take them. And I think that everything I've done up until now in my for-profit businesses, just in terms of events and speaking and social and running a business, everything I've learned has all been because of this and for this. So I don't plan to work a lot longer in the profit space. I would love to go get some larger grants and just do this and really, have a team, have a staff, have a legitimate, larger nonprofit, and get some government contracts in place to really bring education in a meaningful way on marijuana, especially now that we're seeing this legislation introduced to legalize it federally. It's going to be so critical, or we will lose many generations of young people to psychosis and or suicide. And like tobacco, what is it going to be, another 60 years before people go, maybe we shouldn't have rolled marijuana out. Seems like it's a little addictive. So it's just big tobacco all over again, but much, much more scary, ruining their brains. And instead of liver, lungs, now we are going to bring forth mental health issues like you have never seen. So just really learn with us what it's about. We welcome anyone who wants to be an ambassador. Just go to johnny'sambassadors.org/join, and there's all kinds of ways you can get involved. We have our Stop Dabbing Walk coming up on Sunday, September 19th, all around the country. Trying to get 100 teams together. We have 23 teams so far. So,
that's great. That's
just all really working together to try to raise awareness.
Right. And as this airs, people see that it's happened or is happening, and
every year,
they can get on your mailing list, which is really important. So I love, part of my message to those who are at this stage of life, maybe they're they're lacking creativity. They're just, I want to do something else. And maybe they haven't had a tragedy like you have dropped in
I
your
hope
lap.
not. No.
And you wouldn't wish this on anyone. But you are using, what I love, Laura, is you are using the depth of your experience, your skills, and your uniqueness to be able to expand this area. You've had this team, and you've been able to at least put this all in motion and see the future for it. And I would love, for larger grants and all of that. And all it takes is just a few big donors. And
a few big ones.
That's right.
With 100,000 and we'll be able to do a lot.
And for our youth, it is really, really important. And for the future, our future, definitely. Laura, thank you. You are a busy, busy lady. Thank you so much for doing. I love being able to present podcasts. It's so much fun for me.
It is fun. Yes, it's kind of like speaking. You don't have to get on a plane. Yeah,
I know. I don't have to get on the plane. So I've done that quite a bit too. So
appreciate that, and appreciate you honoring Johnny and having me share his warning and our mission. And would love for you to be one of Donnie's ambassadors too, Deborah.
Yes.
And I thank you for having me.
Yes, and I am all for what you're doing, and I'm planning on signing on. So, and to be able to do that.
Thank you so much.
And yes, thank you, all you listeners. This is why I am doing podcasts, is for listeners and for some of your responses. Thank you so much. Next week, I am talking about why write a book. Okay, so this is from an author that we were talking, with Laura. I mean, this is your 9th book, but why write a book? I mean, is it worth all that work and what it takes? I am not a book coach, but I am really bringing up some thought-provoking questions to ask yourself on why write a book, or do some extra research, and it's all kind of coordinated with really setting yourself up as a thought leader as well, which I feel is very important today, not just an expert. We've got a lot of experts out there. We want people that are really thinking through doing the research. So anyway, tune in next week. Listen, subscribe, women@halftime.com. You can get on it. Also contact me on any one of my number of websites that I have out there, Goals for Your Life, or others, DJ Works Music. And it was so fun to be with you. Thank you again for joining me. Listen, subscribe, share, especially this episode. Please go ahead and do that. And thanks again for being with me. And I will look forward to being with you.
Thank you for joining us on Women at Halftime. Visit goalsforyourlife.com or womenathalftime.com for many more resources, downloads, and programs, or to get in touch with me. I'd love it if you leave me a review and tell your friends. So until next time, this is Deborah Johnson, signing off.